Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Titans Season 4, and this is going to be my review for Episode 3 for the season, otherwise entitled Jinx. I think that's what it was called, which makes sense considering the new character we meet this episode. But of course, spoiler alert, if you've not watched the episode, go away, what are you doing? Because we're going to be talking about all the spoilers. And if you have watched the episode, be sure, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below your various thoughts on the episode, what you like, what you hate, favorite moments, and any, thoughts going forward. And if you enjoyed the video, enjoyed the episode, want to show support, why not drop a like on the video? Supports the channel. So we got the first two episodes that dropped last week, and some of the major things were obviously the Church of Blood, Mother Mayhem, Sebastian Sanger, who will eventually be Brother Blood, that sort of build up. And then with the Titans, where the Titans sort of in this almost like a soft reboot of them. Some people said the show as a whole, but I think it was maybe just that group as a whole and sort of refreshing what the Titans should be, just more together, even though they did split off, and in this episode there's a lot of splitting off as well, which is one of my worries going forward, but it made sense in this episode why they were splitting off, because they had to cover a lot of different areas and bases. Bases? If that's a word, I don't think it is. But in regards to relevance for this episode specifically, definitely what Mother Mayhem and the Church of Blood is doing and sort of building up to their grand goal, that definitely builds up leading to this episode, and just some stuff revolving around Sebastian, like the death of his mother and stuff, which is followed through in this episode. But of course, Raven in the Titans altercation with Mother Mayhem does have her gem taken away, and her colored hair, or just her hair, goes the color like white, sort of like it loses all its color. And that's sort of the cliffhanger leading into this episode specifically. Now, regarding this episode was my favorite episode so far this season. I know it's only episode 3, so it's not really saying something massive, but I think it's still worth mentioning that I think this episode is my favorite episode so far, which is good because I think episode 1 builds a good basis for the season. Episode 2 was a bit better than that, and I think episode 3 is better than episode 2 as well. So hopefully that gradual improvement keeps going throughout this season. If that's the case, we could easily have the best season of Titans, because nothing's really worrying me at this moment, which in all the other seasons, there's usually something that catches your eye in the first 3 episodes. You're like, that could be an issue. And then it ends up being an issue 5 episodes down the track, and you don't like the season too much. So if it keeps improving, then we're in for a good season, I think. But I'll handle the review sort of like how I did last week, and I'll probably just do this with all my Titans reviews, just because Titans isn't the best show, I think, to break down too much, just because it is so split up. There's not like a central storyline that all the characters are involved in, that they're involved in, even if like they are really this season, it's just still split up. So I think if you broke it down, I'd be here for half an hour. So let's just talk about the major moments. So the Church of Blood stuff, we kick off in this episode with it, and just like it's slowly moving forward to what they are trying to achieve, and they are really getting a lot out of showing all this blood. I think I don't know who said it. I don't know if it was one of the actors or the showrunner for Titans, but I saw in like an interview where they said that they got to play around with a lot of blood this season, which makes sense because you're dealing with not only Brother Blood, but also the Church of Blood, and there's a pool of blood, and they like to bathe in blood. So you would expect blood to play a decent part in this season, and they're getting away with it in a pretty good fashion. I'm surprised. I don't know what the rating is for this season, like if it's like a more mature in regards to like, it has to be like the step up in like the parental ratings or whatever it is. But I don't know, maybe they get away with it just because it's not too much blood coming from someone's like open wound and stuff like that. But then again, there's something in this episode which we'll get to, which I was like, I did not think they'd be able to do that in Titans. Now, one other thing I have to mention is that training scene with Tim and Connor, or Superboy, at Star Labs. I initially thought it was some of the worst green screen I've ever seen on movie or TV. I thought it was shockingly bad green screen. I was like, how did this get through? And I thought there must be a reason for this, because this looks terrible in regards to green screen. But of course, it was virtual reality, so it was meant to look like that. It wasn't meant to look real. I was a bit scared when I first saw it. I was like, what is going on here? Let me know, did you think when that happened initially that it was really terrible, shockingly bad green screen? Because I have to know, so I'm not tripping out. But then as soon as he started to hit Connor and like the glitching was happening, I was like, it's virtual reality. And then they confirmed that. So thank the Lord, because I was really worried at that point. But let's jump into some of the character moments. So we'll just jump into the namesake, or for the title of the episode, and the new character we met this episode in the form of Jinx. And she's like I thought it was a former foe, but that ends up being a former fling of Dick's in Gotham City, who they go to, for help in regards to the magical stuff because of the issues going on with Raven and her losing her, what's going on with her. Now, Jinx does escape, and she goes and pretty much picks up where she was before she was arrested, but Dick is able to get to her. However, she was trying to get something valuable for a reward. That's the story she pushes. That being like a heart belonging to a dark elf. Crazy, which turns Starfire into Stonefire, I guess. Though we learn this is just a ploy to sort of some issues for her own. Now, she's meant to go down a different path this season from what we get introduced to in this episode. So I'm very curious to see her story because it's not just a one episode thing. So I'm interested to see where she goes. Now, of course, as I said, they go to Jinx because of Raven. Now, Raven has like the loss of her soul self, which, you know, opens herself up to being more centered and normal. There's not too much of that. Like, that's something I think we'll get to in like future episodes, but at least they follow on from the end of last episode in a decent way. But just a side note, I have to say this. I feel like the actress's Aussie accent is falling through much, much more than previous seasons. Like, she's speaking and she's saying words in an Australian accent and then like slipping into an American accent. Then there's like a bit of a British accent that comes in. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it was just like, maybe there's like the distance between seasons and stuff and not doing the American accent for a while. But I just felt like she was slipping in and out of the Aussie accent in regards to saying a whole sentence in an Australian accent and then sort of like mishmashing it in the exact same sentence. I don't know if I'm the only one catching that, but it's a bit weird. But her stuff, like the Raven storyline, sort of merges into Gar or Beast Boy stuff, which we'll get to in a second. So not too much Raven focused stuff this episode. But I guess the magic side delved with other characters, and you know, we got much more episodes where they can slide into that Raven stuff and you know, address it. Now, we got blueballed with Sebastian, I think, in this episode. I was sort of annoyed, but we did get one of the more like holy shit scenes with Sebastian. So we have him dealing with the loss of his mother, which you would expect, but he thinks that he struck luck on the video game offer from last episode. That meeting went terribly, so he just thinks that luck's going his way now. But that's what he thinks. It's obviously Mother Mayhem at work again, and that leads to an awkward confrontation with the head of the development stuff at the game studio. But when we had that scissor bit, and when that happened, I was like, he picked up the scissors. I'm like, well, like first he paused, and I was like, okay, well, something's going on with him. Then he picked up the scissors. I'm like, what's he gonna do here? I thought they were just gonna have it where he stabbed himself in like the neck, because that happens in other stuff as well, and it's less gory. You know, it's less gory. But they went for pretty much the most gory thing I think they could have done. And he slowly opens the scissors to the point where it's a perfect distance from each eyeball to each eyeball, and slowly inserts them. It's not like a stab. It's not like a quick punch in the head with some scissors. It was a slow, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like cutting a cake. Is that the best way to do it? It's like, you don't like stab a cake. You slowly go into a cake. That's what that scene was. And that was gory as hell. Like, that was much gory than I thought it was going to be. And I know some people would have turned away because you just knew what was going to happen. So you either would have muted it so you didn't get any sound effects, or you would have like completely turned away for like 10 seconds. I watched it because I didn't think it was going to be that gory, and even I was like, oh my god, and I don't really get sick from that stuff too much, but that was a bit over the top, I think, but it's definitely effective. But we do learn that the markings found at the crime scene at the beginning of the episode were from Sebastian's video game, which connects the Titans to him and makes them know of him. So that's going to connect, you know, to things going forward. But in particular, they think that Sebastian could be the next victim. So Mother Mayhem finds him, and I was like, oh god, they're gonna push the brother blood thing. It's like, oh, okay, it's episode 3, maybe that works. Maybe it's a bit too early. Maybe it's the right time. I wasn't too sure because I don't know where the story goes for this season. But I was like, okay, episode 3 seems like the okay time to him to delve into the Church of Blood and become Brother Blood and stuff like that. But we get blueballed with the Brother Blood progression by Superboy coming in and taking him. So I don't know how long it's going to take for him to become Brother Blood. Maybe like episode 5, seeing that they do with this episode. Or maybe it could be the end of next one. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I thought this might have been the right time, but maybe Mother Mayhem has to mess around some more. And maybe that leads to maybe Jinx getting folded into things as well. It's a wait and find out, but yeah, I was expecting him to become Brother Blood just based off the build-up from the episode, but Superboy went, no, not happening today. Sorry. Now, Beast Boy or Gar, or Garfield or Gar, I just call him Gar or Beast Boy, but he's still dealing with like those changes with his abilities, with him hearing voices like we had in the previous 2 episodes, or last episode in particular. And he does come across that tree again that we saw in episode 1 alongside Raven, with Gar hearing out or hearing that like when the blood moon is full, the world will fall to evil. So it seems they are trying, or they are tying, not trying, but they are tying Gar into the Church of Blood stuff, which I think is cool, and just connecting everything. Because I think that was an issue in previous seasons, was that like everyone would be on their own little selves doing their own things, and like maybe like one or two characters are connected to the main storyline that's going on, but it feels like they're connecting everyone to certain elements of it. So we have Gar going through all this stuff where he's getting all these like, you know, messages and just different changes within his abilities and all that stuff. Obviously Raven's connected to it. I mean, what Mother Mayhem did to her last episode and what we saw at the beginning of the episode, like the transferring of the powers and stuff like that. Then we have Superboy, which is the Superboy, and like the Tim stuff, which connects to the more grounded stuff with Sebastian at the moment. Where that goes, you know, further into the season, that's a wait and find out. So everything's connecting in a pretty interesting way where everyone's involved, though it is separated. So we're getting some of those issues where, well, not issues, but some of those worries that you'd have from previous seasons where everyone is separated and just doesn't feel like a group, but they're all on the same storyline, which I think is interesting. Not like, and you still have people going on their own personal journeys, like with Gar, like with Raven, even Starfire this episode, but it's all under that same umbrella of this Church of Blood storyline. So they're handling that very, very well. And I think setting it up now means that it's harder to lose track of it when you get later into the season, just because it builds up and the threat becomes bigger. So you'd expect the team to come together. So that's a good sign. That's a very good sign. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Just because it's a bit different from previous seasons. And there's nothing that stands out as an issue at the moment, so that's always a good thing. But yeah, as I said, overall, this episode was my favorite episode of the season so far. As I said, not saying much because we're only 3 episodes in, but it's still a good sign, you know what I mean? It's not like it was terrible compared to the first 2 episodes. It was better. So, yeah, thought it was a good carry-on, a good continuation throughout the season. Very interested to see when we get to like episode 5, 6, where we are in the story for this season, because you'd have to think things are built up to quite a level at that point. But yeah, we're getting there slowly, and nothing screams out as an issue at this point, so that's a good sign. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome. Could drop a like on it, show support. Let me know in the comments section down below your various opinions on this episode. You love it, did you hate it, what were your favorite moments, any issues that you have so far. Let me know in the comments section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.